Well, Christian, I'd like to thank you for coming in today and talking with us. I've gone over your intake assessment, and I just want to start off with letting you know that during the beginning of the session, it's normal for me to set the agenda and just kind of go over some things that I'd like to add. And in the very end, I will ask you for some feedback. But how we do this is we're going to see what you know about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. Then I'd like to find out what your mood is like, how you've been feeling. Tell me about a normal week for you at home with your family. And then we'll talk about some of the difficulties you've been having. And we'll try to pick one of them today to start working on. And towards the end, I'll have a homework assignment that I'd like for you to look at and take home and work on, and maybe come back with some of the answers for next session. And then at the very end, like I said earlier, I just want some feedback to see if you have anything that you'd like to add to the agenda. And you'll notice throughout the session, you'll see me writing things down, because I like to make sure that I keep up with all the important details that you're giving me. Is there anything right now that you think that you would like to add to the agenda?
No, that sounds pretty okay.
Okay, well, if you think of anything throughout the session, just let me know and I'll jot it down. What I'd like to do is start off is finding out your mood. And can you tell me about some of the problems you've been having this week?
Well, I went to jail for domestic violence. Apparently, if you call the police first, then the other person gets arrested. So that's what happened to me. My boyfriend, we were arguing, and I hit him, or he pushed me and I hit him, and it ensued. So now I went to jail, and I have to stay with my mom because I have an order of protection, against me from him. And so, that's where I'm at right now.
Well, what I'd like to do right now is find out what you know about cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'd like to discuss how your thinking affects the way that you feel. Has anyone ever talked to you about cognitive behavioral therapy?
No, not really. I've never heard of it.
Well, can you think of any time this week where you noticed that your mood was changed because of certain thoughts that you were having, and it affected the way that you feel?
There was one time this week, dropping my kids off at school and noticing all the other families, how those kids have dads, and my kids don't really have a dad. And they do, but he's not around. So it kind of made me feel like I'll never have that, and I'll never feel loved.
So what was going through your mind then when you saw the children at the schoolyard?
I was feeling sad. Feel sad for me, sad for my kids, and just feel like I'll never be loved. So it just makes me depressed.
So that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about that I wanted to show you with cognitive behavioral therapy. That was an example where you said, I don't feel that I'll ever be loved. How that influenced the way you felt. And you said you felt sad. This is something that I would like for us to work on today, is channeling some energy on those automatic thoughts. Okay, I would like for you to look at this diagram, and I hope it helps you see how your thoughts influence your emotions. See, on the diagram it shows that you're in a situation and you have a certain thought, and depending on those thoughts, how they influence your mood and your emotions. Do you understand that? With this diagram, I'd like you to see that the situation you're in, you have a certain thought, and how those thoughts affect your feelings. And throughout the day's session, you're going to learn how to evaluate your thoughts and realize how they influence your feelings. I just want to let you know that that was a perfect example of an automatic thought when you said that I would never be loved. We all have them, and sometimes they just pop up and you're not really thinking about them. Most of the time these thoughts are distorted, but we react as if they were true. So Christian, tell me, what do you think would happen to your emotions if you discovered the saying, I would never find true love, what do you think would happen to your emotions when you discover that that is actually not true? And then when your depression lifts, that you realize that that type of thought is not a true thought. How do you think you would feel then?
I would probably feel better.
Okay, so do you see how when you think different thoughts about the situation, how it influences the way that you feel?
Yeah.
Well, what I'd like for you to do is get a pen and paper, and this is kind of the beginning of the homework assignment that I'd like for you to come in next week, is I want you to write down, identify automatic thoughts. Can you write that down for me? And what I'd like for you to do is next week, when you notice that your mood changes, I want you to write down what you were thinking, okay, what situation happened and how it affected your feelings, how it made you feel. I want you to evaluate and respond to those thoughts. Is that something you could do for me next week?
Yeah.
Okay. And what I'd like for you to do right now is, can you tell me in your own words why I really want you to do this assignment and about your thoughts and your feelings?
Sometimes my thoughts are wrong and make me feel bad.
Exactly.
But what if my thoughts are right?
Well, that's a good point. We may need to do some more examples, I guess, to go through some of the errors in your thinking. And right now, I can probably feel that a lot of your thinking has been negative, because I read in the intake assessment that you've been feeling depressed. And usually when people are depressed, they have negative thinking. Can you think of another time this week where you felt upset?
Yeah, when I was at my mother's house with my children.
Well, tell me, what was going through your mind when you were at the house with your children?
That I wanted my relationship with John. And that I wanted my kids back.
And what emotion were you feeling?
Depressed. Sad.
Okay. That's another example of how we can examine your thoughts. Well, let's spend some time talking about that right now. I read, and you stated earlier that right now that you're living with your mother. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's true. I've been living at home with my mom since the arrest, and it's just been making me crazy. I feel like a failure. I just want my life back.
Well, Christian, it sounds like you've been, kind of down on yourself. Do you think that you can think of anything you've done this week that makes you feel good about yourself since you've been living with your mother?
Well, I was able to stay at my mom's and have a safe place. My kids had a safe place.
Is there anything else you can think of?
We were all together and there's no violence.
Is there anything else that you can think of that happened good?
No.
Well, I think you might be missing some things. For instance, what did you do after you picked up your children from school? What did you do after that?
Well, we went to McDonald's and they played in the play area and I played with them.
Okay, well, do you think that you spent a good amount of mommy and kids time together at McDonald's?
Yeah, we played for about an hour. I'd say we did.
Okay, and after you left McDonald's, what did you do after that?
We came home and I helped them with their homework and gave them a bath and we read stories and I put them to bed.
Okay. So it sounds to me that you might be missing out on some of the positive things that's happening right now while you're at your mother's house. After you get off work, you go pick your kids up. You go to McDonald's and feed them. You spend great time with them. You play with them. You're interacting with them. You're engaging with them. You come home and you have the energy to give them a bath and put them in bed. And I think that's something that you need to give yourself credit for. So Christian, I just want to know, do you feel that doing all that was easy, or do you feel like you had to push yourself?
It was easy. I love my kids. No one should have to be pushed to love their kids.
It sounds like that you're, comparing yourself to other people. Do you do that a lot?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounds like that you need to understand that you're not like other people. And right now, from the intake assessment, I read that you've been dealing with some depression. And I think you're kind of being a little hard on yourself. Would you say it would be easy for someone to go to work and pick their kids up from school and have lots of energy if they were sick with pneumonia?
No, I would have a legitimate reason to be tired.
Exactly. And I wonder if you feel that you have a legitimate reason to be tired right now.
Yeah, I do. I guess you're right.
Well, I'm glad you realized that, and it seems that you deserve to give yourself some credit. You know, you've done a lot with the situation that you have going on here. And I'd like for you to pull out that paper that we had earlier, that the first homework assignment that I wanted you to jot down. I want you to jot this down it's called Things That You Deserve Credit For. Okay? And what I'd like for you to do, along with your automatic thought assignment, sometime this week, I want you to think about some of the things that you've done that you deserve credit for that are positive. And write that down and start giving yourself credit for some of those things, okay? Is that an assignment you think that you could work on this week, along with the automatic thoughts assignment, writing down how your thoughts affect your emotions?
Yeah, I think that's something I can do.
Okay. Another thing I'd like for you to do is write down how your mood changes when you start comparing yourself with others. For example, earlier you said no one else has to push themselves to care for their children. You know, how did that make you feel?
Felt pretty bad.
Okay, and so now you wonder, when you compare yourself with other people, how that too can affect your mood.
Well, I guess I realize that I'm doing more now.
Well, this is just one of the things that I wanted us to work on as far as with cognitive behavioral therapy that I explained earlier, is I want to work on that with you today as far as with your mood and your thoughts, and that's something that next session that you can come back in. Is that something you feel like would be easy for you to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think I can do that.
Well, good. Well, Christian, I just want to let you know that earlier I had you fill out some paperwork, and we had an advantage and disadvantage assessment. And I had you kind of write down and reflect some of the advantages of staying with John versus the disadvantages. And I also had you write down some of the advantages that you have with staying with your mother versus the disadvantages. Is it okay if we go over that?
Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to show you, here you have some of the advantages with staying with John. And you listed 4 things. And the first thing you mentioned is you'd have someone to love you. And the second advantage is that you have someone to help you with your children. And you also mentioned that he helps you with the bills, and that it was really important for you to have your family together. Do you remember writing that?
Yeah.
Okay. And you also put down here that some of the disadvantages of staying with John is that he's physically and verbally abusive towards you. And sometimes he can be physically and verbally abusive towards your children. Another thing that you mentioned, a disadvantage with John, is that he drinks and he lies. And he had you falsely arrested. Do you remember filling this out?
Yes, I do.
Well, now that we've covered that, I want to go down into the advantages of staying with your mother. You put down that you have a safe home, and that right now your mother's very supportive and you don't have to pay any bills right now. And you know, staying with her is really giving you some stability. But some of the disadvantages is that you feel like a failure, and that you have no privacy, and your mother has been adamant about John not coming over to the house, and you feel sad and alone.
Yeah.
Now, I had you go through and rate from 1 to 10 the most important things within the advantages and disadvantages, and it seems like you have the most important thing is having someone to love and having your family back together. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
And that was one of the advantages of going back to John. But down here you also rated that some of the advantages with staying with your mother is that you got a safe home and the security that you feel while you were there. So what I'd like to know is, with this worksheet we have here, which one of these would you think would be the most important for us to start working on today?
Someone to love me.
You want to work on that? What I'd like to do right now is kind of review some of the things that we've talked about, when we can go ahead and get together what we're going to talk about on the next session that we come in. Is that okay?
Yeah. That's good.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to go over what you said earlier, that when we were talking about the advantages and disadvantages, and you basically said from 0 to 10, the most important thing for us to work on right now is how you feel that you don't have someone to love you. Christian, I just want you to tell me in your own words, do you feel that your family, your mother, or your children, do you feel that they love you?
Yeah, I really do feel like they do, and I get a lot of love from my mom, and my kids definitely give me a lot of love.
And I read that some of the advantages with staying with your mom is that she's been very supportive. Do you feel that her supporting you and you not having to pay any bills right now, is that a way of her showing love to you?
You know, you're right. Yeah, it is a way of her showing love to me, because she don't have to do that.
That's true. And right now, I just kind of want us to work on some counteractive thoughts about that situation with love. Whenever you start to feel that you're not loved, I want you to think about your mother and how she's supporting you right now, and think about your children. Is that something that you can work on?
Yeah, I can work on that.
Okay. Well, right now, I would just like to review and summarize some of the things that we've talked about, and then at the very end I'd like to get some feedback. So you are going to remember this week, and I want you to kind of write down, look for some automatic thoughts, and write down how your thoughts make you feel. And also I wanted you to write down how your mood changes when you compare yourself to other people, okay? Do you understand why I'm suggesting for you to do this assignment?
Yeah, I understand. You basically want me to realize that how I feel changes my mood. And, you know, when I compare myself to people, how that affects my mood as well, and how that can, in turn, affect my behavior.
Okay, well, and next week when we come in, I have this down that I want us to start talking about what you did earlier about the advantages and disadvantages with your relationship with John. And I know that's something important for you to get your family back together. And it says here that you have an order of protection and that you are staying with your mother, and that he's not able to come over to the mother's house, and you're not going over there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I think that's a good thing, because right now I want to focus on how you've been feeling and how your thought life affects your mood. And I really think that you need some time to work on this. And I appreciate you coming out to the session. And next week when you come in with your assignment, we'll go over all of the advantages and disadvantages with John.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, is there any feedback that you'd like to give me? Is there anything that I said that bothered you today, or anything you want to add to the agenda that we can put on for next week? And just tell me, how do you feel the session?
I think next week I just want to really focus on just getting my family back together.
Okay. Well, we definitely have that down for the agenda, and thank you again for coming out. And I'm so happy to see your son and